Oh hi, it's me, Office Matt. Today I'm taking you through the very last Meet the Maker instructional video, and this one is all about using the editing software. There's a lot of information to get through, so I think there's no time for any peanuts, not even one peanut. Maybe just half a peanut, just one half of one peanut. So all the time there is. There's no more time except for this one half a peanut. Then no more peanuts time for this video. Okay, let's get straight into it. First, what we're going to do is open up DaVinci. When it opens up, you'll see this screen. I've made a template. So click on Meet the Maker's template and click on Open. Now, the first thing we're going to do is save your own version. So that template is always there for everyone else to use. So we're going to go File, Save Project As, and here you put in your name. So I'm going to call it Matt or Matt's Project. Now you can see up here, it's called Matt's Project. Now what we might do straight away, go up the top, DaVinci Resolve, Quit DaVinci Resolve. Okay, now reopen it. Okay, now when it reopens, you'll see that there's a new option, which is Matt's Project. So we're going to click that and open. And look up the top here, we're in Matt's Project. Great, first that's step one done. DaVinci is broken up into a bunch of different workspaces. We won't use them all, but we'll just run through them all really quickly now. So if you look at the bottom of the screen, and you hover over each tab, we're in Media at the moment. You can tell which tab we're in because it's got a red line underneath it. This one is Cut. This one is Edit, which we'll use. This one is Fusion, we won't use that one. This is Color, we won't use either. This is called Fairlight, but it's a music symbol. That's where we will do some audio stuff later. And this rocket ship is Deliver, or it's where we're going to render out the project at the end. But for now, let's just stay in the Media tab. So I've set up a few folders here. In DaVinci, these folders are called bins. We've got audio, footage, other, and timelines. If you need to add your own, use 2 fingers and click on the trackpad and go New Bin. Okay, it's just popped up here, bin 5, and then you name it whatever you need it to be. Other 2. Okay, in order to have a bit of a play around in here, let's import those video files that we got off the camera in the last instructional video. So what we're going to do is go into the footage folder. You can either double click it, or over here is a list of your folders, which you can click through to make sure you're in footage. And then we're going to come up the top and go File, Import, Media. We'll click on that. Now we'll go to the desktop over here, find the folder that you made when you got the video files off the camera. Select all the files by putting down one finger and dragging over the files you want to import, and then click Open. And here they are. They're now accessible in the program. Now, while we're still in the Media tab, let's import some music that we'll use later. Let's go to the Audio folder, go up the top, File, Import, Media. Now I've just put Goat Buskers in here. I'll talk you through the process of getting music a little bit later. We'll go Open. Okay, so that's there now. There's a bin called Other. That's for if you need to import media that isn't footage from the camera or an audio file. And the other bin is Timelines. So let's click on Timelines. Now, I've set up a template scene there called Scene 1. Double click. Okay, now that has actually brought us, if you look down the bottom, into the Edit tab. Okay, so let's have a look at some of this footage. So let's go to Footage in the top left here. And here are the 3 videos that we imported earlier. Now you'll notice straight away, if you hover your cursor and drag it slowly across each clip, you get a preview of the clip. That's going to be really useful if you've done multiple takes, and you can quickly decide which clip to drop into your timeline. I've had a quick look and I'm pretty sure it's number 3 for me. So I'm going to click with one finger and drag it down here into the timeline. When you drag your selected clip into the timeline, you'll notice it's split into 2 pieces. A blue piece, which is the video component, and a green piece, which is the audio component. Before you move anything, come to this icon in the middle of the screen that looks like 2 links in a chain together. We're going to click that. That's linked selection. What that does is make sure that the video file and the audio file are linked together when you move them around. So now just select your file and drag it around the timeline. You'll notice they'll go together left and right, but if you move the cursor up and down, they'll jump between different layers. If you were to unlink that linked selection icon and click off of them, and then just come back and select one, you'll notice that it will move around separately. The best thing you can do if you accidentally offset your audio and video file is to hold down the Command key and press Z until the 2 files line up again. Now press the link selection key. Now the 2 items will move together again. Now I'm going to show you a few ways to move around this edit space. The first thing is this red slider bar. You can click and drag it to any point in your timeline. When you drag it over a video file, it will play the video in the viewer. What we might do to start is grab our video and audio clip and just bring it to the start of our timeline. We're not going to be using anything on this side of the screen for a while. So if you bring your cursor to the middle, the line between the viewer and timeline and this section over here, the cursor will turn into a vertical line with an arrow pointing in each direction. If you just click and drag that, you can make that section as small as possible, which gives us more room to play around with our timeline. For now, just have a play around. Click on the red line here and just scrub through the video forwards and backwards. This is how you're going to find particular points in your video and work out where to cut. The other really important thing in this window is how to magnify. So you'll see a plus and a minus over here. If you click on that and you drag it towards the minus, you'll see you'll zoom out on your timeline. And if you go towards the plus, you'll zoom right in on your timeline. It'll actually zoom to the point where the red line is. So if you want to zoom in on something particular, drag the red line to that point first, and then zoom in. You'll find yourself using this feature all the time. The other thing to notice in the Edit tab is the transport bar. This is where you hit play to watch your video, stop to stop your video, and you can also rewind right to the start by pressing this one. I tend to just zoom in and out and then scrub my way around. You'll find your own way that you're comfortable with as well. There's no right or wrong. Next, I'm going to show you how to cut that video file up into 2 pieces so that we can move the 2 pieces around independently. First, scrub to the point in the video that you want to cut. I'm going to make it here while I'm still typing, but I haven't turned my head yet. Next, I'm going to select Blade Edit Mode here. Go to somewhere near that point. It's going to snap to that point anyway, so close enough. Click. I always make sure when I'm finished using the blade tool that I go back and select the selection tool. That way you can't accidentally cut a piece of video. Next, I'm going to drag the slider across until after I've reset the camera and the action has started. As you can see, I spent time playing with the lighting to make the shot look as good as possible. And it looks like it starts about here. There's two ways to do this. I could either use the blade edit tool and cut at this point, go back to the selection tool, select this middle section that I don't need, and then press delete. That would be one way to get the two shots. I'm just going to do Command Z to get it back to before I'd used the blade tool. The other way that you can do it is if you hover at the start of this timeline until this icon appears, which is kind of an arrow and a bracket. If you click, then you can actually just drag this to that point. That way you're still in selection mode and you can just grab this one and drag it straight up next to the other clip. Let's drag to the middle of those and zoom in so we can have a better look at the join here. So if we scroll across, we'll see it goes from one to another. Oh, I can see I want to actually be typing already. See how I've started typing in that shot? So I already want to be typing here. So I'm just going to drag this across. May as well tidy it up as we go. Now we can just scrub across this. It still needs a little bit more, doesn't it? All right, let's try again. Good. Now, there's a few different ways that we can treat this transition. We can leave it as it is, and that's called a jump cut. It just goes from one shot to the next. But there's a few other simple things you can do to make your transitions a little more interesting. If you hover over the top corner of a join, you'll see two white arrows and a white keystone. If you click on it and drag it, and we do the same to the other side, what that's done is a little fade to black and fade up from black. So without, and we can just drag it, we can make them as long or short as we want. Without it, it looks like this. And with it, it looks like this. If you think your video needs something other than a jump cut or a fade, there are plenty of other options on the left-hand side here in your toolbox. First, what we're going to do is make sure that the red slider is in between our two clips. Then we're going to come to the left, and in the toolbox you'll see video transitions. If you hover your cursor over some of these, it will preview the different transitions that you could use. There are so many of these. Just have a play. It's fun just to see what it can do. To use one, here, this one's ridiculous. Diamond Iris. You just simply click and drag, and you'll see it creates a white rectangular box between the two clips. Let's just zoom in a little more. You can also make your video files bigger by dragging over here. And you can extend the dissolve. Let's see what that looks like. Great. I'm just going to delete that. So I'm going to select it and just click delete. All right, there we go. It's gone. Have as much fun as you like, but you'll find that a jump cut or a fade is probably all you would need for most situations. You may have noticed that for this example, we used the continuous shot setup, where we reset the camera in the middle of the shot. So when we've edited it, we have used the blade tool to split our video into two pieces, and then got rid of the dead air by deleting it, and then we've moved the two pieces that we want to use together. If we'd used a different setup where we've done one continuous take and then a second continuous take, we can use the layers in the video editing software to have two pieces of video playing at the same time. So if that's one of the setups you've used, what you would do, let's just zoom out again. is you simply drag your video file up to the next layer. In video editing software, the layers of video work just like layers of anything. Whatever is on top of the next thing is going to cover the thing below it. When you start having multiple layers of things, it's a good idea to start a naming convention. So what you'll see over here is we've now got something in video 1 and something in video 2. What we might call it, if you just click on it once, it'll bring up a flashing cursor, and then you can name that layer. So I'm going to call this mid shot, and I'll click on this one and I'll call it CU for close up. Now, when we scrub through the video, the layer on top is the one that we see, but we can disable the video track to watch the video underneath. When we enable it again, we can see the one on top. Once you've got your two video layers synced, you would then use the blade edit tool to cut sections out of the top layer of video where appropriate. And now you've cut between the two videos. But for now, let's just Command Z back to our nice, simple job cut. Let's pay a little bit of attention to the audio now. So the first thing to notice is that we can change the height of the track. This makes it easier to see the waveform. As we scrub through, we're scrubbing through the audio as well as the video. Now, if we move this video back on top of the other video, you'll notice that there's now also two layers of audio. If you only wanted to use one of these layers, what you would do is unlink the video and audio, choose the audio that you'd like to delete, press the delete key at the top right-hand side of the keyboard, relink the video and audio channels, and now you'll find that this video has no audio, but this video has retained its audio. While we're here, let's name that track, just like we named the video tracks. And we'll call this one VO for voiceover. While we're here, let's expand this track down and let's call this one music. What we might do now is go into that audio folder where we put our music track. Just like we did with the video, we're going to click and drag it right here, and then you can just move it around like any other piece of video or audio. And that's our music. So now, when we hit play, we will hear the voiceover and the music at the same time.
I just realized I needed some footage in the camera to show you how to get the footage.
There's a couple of things we can do to the audio now to make it sound as good as possible. The first thing we're going to do is normalize the tracks. So select the music track, and we're going to use two fingers to double click. Move the cursor to normalize audio levels. This should be preset for you, but if not, just choose True Peak -10 dB and hit normalize. We're going to do the same thing to our voiceover track. Select the audio, normalize audio levels, True Peak -10 dB, normalize. What that's done is make sure that the music and the audio track never go above -10 dB. A good way to visualize this is if you go to the top right-hand corner of your screen, you'll see here it says Mixer, and there's some sliders. If we click on that, that will reveal a mixer down here in the bottom right-hand corner. You'll see our two tracks there. We have VO and we have music. When we play from the transport bar, you'll notice that the levels never go to the red. What we're looking for is to keep those levels in the mixer at around -10 dB. It doesn't matter if they go a little bit higher occasionally. It doesn't matter if they go a little bit lower occasionally. As long as they hover around that 10, it doesn't even matter if they go into the red just a little bit. That's all fine. If you can keep it there, it will be the same volume as anything else you might play on the internet, and it should sound pretty good. Let's focus for a minute on the voice channel. There's a couple of extra things we can do to make the voice sound really good, but first we're going to need to move to the audio tab, which they call Fairlight. So click on the audio tab. What you'll see is in the audio tab, there's a lot more real estate provided to the visualization of the audio waveforms, and the video screen is just a small window up in the top right-hand corner. First thing we're going to do is find the music channel, and we're going to mute it. You'll see there is an R, an S, and an M. The M stands for mute, so if we click mute, we'll only be hearing the VO channel. The S stands for solo, so if we unmute the music and we solo the VO, we'll get the same effect of just hearing the voiceover. The R is for record, and I'll show you that in just a moment. For now, go down to the bottom right-hand corner of your screen into the mixer, and you'll see EQ with a blue line running through it, and dynamics. They're the two we're going to play with. Let's start with dynamics. To start, move the slider to the start of some audio. Then find the VO channel in the mixer and double-click in the box next to dynamics. In here, on the left, you have an expander and a gate, a compressor, and a limiter. Don't worry if you don't know what some of these things are. All I'm going to do is encourage you to play around a little bit to decide if something sounds better or worse. So the first thing we're going to do is press spacebar. Spacebar will play the audio and pause the audio. So try turning on the compressor and then press spacebar to play and stop. Then turn it off and press space again and listen. I think it sounds better with the compressor on, so I'm going to leave the compressor on. Play around with these as much as you like. The next thing we're going to look at is the EQ or equalizer. It's just above the dynamics there, and we'll open it in the same way by double clicking in that area next to EQ. It's going to bring up this blue line. Basically, on the left-hand side are the low frequencies or deeper notes, and on the right-hand side are the higher frequencies or the high-pitched notes. What you can do is click on one of the nodes, and you can change the equalization of the track. When I EQ my voice, I find that usually I need just a little bit extra in this sort of high, mid-high range, and a little bit extra down here in the kind of low mid range, and something like that usually makes my voice sound a little bit better, I find. And I figured that out just by experimentation, listening to it and dragging the slider around. So I encourage you to have a play around as well. See how good you can make your voice sound. If you get to this stage of your editing and you're listening to the audio and you decide that it's not passable, there are a couple of things that you can do. The first is to finish the edit anyway, and then watch the edit while re-recording on the camera, you redoing the voiceover. Then you can import that into the video and you've got a brand new voiceover. Or you can actually record straight into DaVinci from the audio tab. The way to do that is to set the microphone up like we did for the Zoom workshop. If you find you need to record audio, you'll need to mute the computer speakers so the speakers don't play that audio back into the microphone. The easiest way to do that is by pressing the mute button in the top right-hand corner of the keyboard in the digital display. When it's time to unmute, just press it again. You can also use the volume as a slider if you'd like to listen to the audio louder or softer. Once you've got that USB microphone setup plugged into the laptop, what you can do is choose an unused track, bring your slider to the beginning of your video. You can arm the track for recording by clicking on R, Can also solo the track. That way we won't be distracted by any of the music or the old VO. Then, up in the transport bar, we simply click record. Now we re-record the audio while watching the video in the top right-hand corner of the screen. Once you've finished recording, click the R. That way you can't record over it by accident. Scrub back to the beginning and check your audio by hitting spacebar. Now we re-record the audio while watching the video in the top. If you find yourself needing to record audio in this way, there are a couple of things you can do to make the audio sound even better when you record. The idea is that you don't want to be around too many reflective surfaces, like a bathroom with tiles would be a terrible place to record your audio because you get a lot of reverb. What you want is a space with a lot of curtains that soak up the sound, or you can actually manufacture that space. I've recorded before with just a towel over my head to cut out all external sounds, or for example in this office, if you'll bear with me, I can spin the camera around and I'll show you. Oh look, there's the light setup. I've actually hung a doona on a curtain rail above some bookshelves. And I found that's a good way to deaden the sound in my office. The last thing I want to show you to do with audio is back in the Edit tab. So let's head back on over there. Now let's zoom right in on a waveform. We'll make the track higher and we'll go towards the plus and zoom in. Sometimes you'll find in an audio track there'll be a clip where there's been a loud noise that clips out the track and it goes into the red briefly and it just sounds really weird and it's good to get rid of. Or there might be a period of time where you just spoke a little more loudly than you had for the rest that you'd like to normalize. So I'm going to show you a couple of different ways to do that. So let's say this bit of audio is the bit of audio that's too loud and we want to make it quieter. First thing we'll do is unlink the tracks. Next, select the blade tool, move the scrubber to the start of the track, and cut the audio track. Move the scrubber to the other side of the audio and cut it as well. Move back and get your selection tool. Hover over a line in the middle of the audio where two white arrows appear. If you click and drag that up and down, you'll see it changes the volume of that piece of audio track. You can also move that line up and down on any audio track without cutting it, and it would do the same thing as if you'd used the slider on the mixer for that channel. What I'm going to do now is just Command Z, get rid of those slices and show you another way to do it. So for this method, what we would do is hover the cursor at the start of the offending piece of audio, press the Option button, and then click. Do this again right next to it, so you end up with two dots or nodes. Do the same thing. Sometimes you need to move the slider out of the way. Do the same thing on the other side of the offending piece of audio. Now, you can hover in the middle and you can slide that section up and down. And you can see how it's only affecting the inside nodes and the rest of the audio track is staying the same. If there's a lot of background noise in your audio, sometimes it's a good idea to just trim out any dead air between places where you're talking. And there's a quick way that you can fade the audio in and out around these cuts just to make sure it sounds really nice and seamless. I'll show you how to do it now. First, let's delete those nodes using Command Z. Let's zoom out. Make sure our clips are still unlinked. Let's get the blade tool and just trim that audio. Get the selection tool, delete that dead air. Let's zoom in a little bit on the start here. Now, just like we faded the video tracks to black, we can actually fade the audio tracks in and out in this exactly the same way. So you'll notice at the start of the track, if we click on the white node and drag it in, that's fading the audio track in. Let's have a listen. And then at the end of the track, I can see visually that here is the end. So I'm going to drag this here and then just give it a little fade out. There's one last thing I'd like to show you, and I think it's pretty fun, and it makes your videos just look a little bit more dynamic. So what we're going to do is come back up to the top right-hand corner where we found the mixer before. Let's make sure we've got a video selected. We'll zoom out a little bit so we can see the whole video. Go to the start of the video, and these white buttons here create nodes like we made in the audio track. So let's make a node at the start of the video for zoom and position. Now click here on zoom and move your finger. Let's just zoom in a little bit. Now on position, let's just move to one side until the black appears and then move back. Now drag the slider to the end of the video. Place 2 new waypoints for zoom and position, although zoom will stay the same actually. So we can unclick zoom. Now here, let's move the position of the video to the other side until the black border appears at the edge and then move it back. Now let's see what happens to the video. Did you notice how that little bit of movement in the video just made it that extra bit special? Using a combination of nodes in the inspector and video effects in the toolbox, which I encourage you to also just have a play around with and have some fun, you can really make your video look like anything. But also, on the other side of things, sometimes simple is the best. There's one more last thing I'd like to show you, and that's how to add text. So if you look over on the left-hand side in your toolbox, you'll see titles. Here, you've got really many options of titles. I'm just going to pick a basic one, text, and I'm going to drag that over and put it on the top video layer so that it displays on top of my video. From here, you can treat it like any piece of video. We can make it smaller and bigger. We can fade it in and out. And if you go to the inspector and go to title, it's under rich text here. That's where you can change Matt's video. The text, you can change the color and the font and all sorts of things in there. Again, just play around, have fun. The last thing to show you is how to render. So if you come along to the rocket ship tab on the end here that says deliver. Okay, this is where we're going to render the video. Rendering is basically compiling all of those shots and audio and transitions, everything you've added, and turning it into the final single video product. So what we need to do is choose a file name. So I'm going to call this Matt's Video 01, because I might end up doing multiple passes. Then I click Browse. Here's where I'm going to choose the location of the video. I'm going to put it on the desktop in the Matt folder. Save that. Now I'm going to go to YouTube here and I'm going to do 720p, and then under resolution I'm going to go 720 by 576 PAL. The reason that I've done these particular settings is that that is the lowest resolution video that looks okay, which means it's going to be the quickest to render and it's going to be the smallest to email. Once you're happy with your settings, click Add to Render Queue and you'll see the job appears in the right-hand top corner. Then, when you're ready, click Render. If your project is sufficiently big, rendering can take a long time, hours really, and during that time, your computer isn't really usable. You can still try and use it, but it'll be very slow and it will chug, and I'm always paranoid that if I do something that crashes the computer, then I'll lose my render and I'll have to re-render it again, waiting hours. You might choose to render it overnight so that you can keep editing during the day, render overnight, and see what it looks like in the morning. When you're finished your video and you're ready to do your final render, the version that will be displayed on the Artisan website, what you want to do is go to YouTube, 1080p, and then just use the default settings from there. If you ever need to minimize DaVinci to look for assets in a Finder window or to watch a recently rendered video, the best way to do it is by pressing the arrow in the digital display on the keyboard. Press this button here that looks like 3 rectangles. That will show you any apps that are open, and from here you can either select something that's already open, or you have access to the dock bar as well if you need to open another program. All right, let's check the video worked. We'll go to Finder, Desktop. I'm going to go into my folder, and there it is, Matt's Video 01, and I'm just going to double click it and press play.
I just realized I needed some footage in the camera to show you how to get the footage off the camera, and I'm going to do that in a minute, just as soon as I'm finished hacking into the mainframe.
Because your Meet the Maker video is going to be on the internet, we have to be really careful that we don't infringe on anyone's copyright, especially when it comes to music. So there's a couple of things we can do to get around this. The first is, you might know someone who is a musician who has access to music for which they own the copyright that they might let you use. Or you might be musical yourself. You can record something straight into DaVinci, for example. Or there is another way. So if you open up Firefox, which looks like a fox that is wrapped around a ball that is on fire. I've set the home screen on the Firefox to bring up a website called Motion Array. Motion Array is a company that provides assets to post-production companies, and Artisan has paid for a license to use this service. So we're allowed to use anything we find on this website in your video. Let's start by searching the marketplace. In here, just to start, let's type music, and hit return. Now once it's loaded, you can see that it's brought up a whole bunch of music tracks. Now let's just clear this search. Let's scroll down and look at the filter results here on the left-hand side, and you can see royalty-free music. Let's expand that by pressing the arrow down. You'll see we have filters here for BPM, that's beats per minute. Don't really have to worry about that one. Durations, I also wouldn't worry about that one. All rights usages would be good, all content ID statuses. And finally, we have styles. And this is where you might make some creative choices about what you'd like the music to sound like behind your video. For example, let's just turn on peaceful. Now the only audio tracks that are displayed are ones that Motion Array has deemed to be peaceful. So what you can do is click play on these, and you'll get an idea of what the track sounds like, and if that's the mood that you were thinking of for your video. Now, there's no limit to how many of these you can use, and I actually suggest that you request more than you could possibly need. That way, you can try out a few different vibes behind your video to see which one really represents your brand the best. Once you've chosen a number of tracks, email the name of the tracks to your Artisan contact. Well, there you go. Now you know how to use all the gear in that kit to make your Meet the Maker video and run your Meet the Maker workshop. Thank you for hanging out with me, and I'm really looking forward to seeing what you come up with. I think I'll be the first one on the website going, refresh, refresh, I want to see the videos. And if you're feeling overwhelmed, just remember, it basically comes down to being as prepared as possible, doing things like playing around with the gear and making sure it's all charged before, the day before you need to use it, so you can be as playful as possible, so you can get your story across and you can get your art out there in the best possible light. So thanks again from Jack and Bree and myself and Potato Jack and the hen and some goats and some peanuts. See you later.
And the two of us need